All right. Hey, everyone. As promised, I wanted to put up a YouTube video going over our indirect proof. Before I get into that, I just want to say I'm really impressed with all the guys who've come to ask for help. I think I've had more people here over the last 2 days than I did during the first 2 months of the school year. It's just great to see all the proactivity and I suppose reactivity, and I hope to see that continue. But I could talk to myself for hours, so let's dive into this. So again, I trust that you've read the problem at this point. And we kind of want to establish our facts, right? So we know that there's two tribes, one tells the truth, one always lies. The other piece of information that you get that is going to be helpful is that there actually is one of each of them. So in the past, we've seen the last practice problem we did in the last class, actually there were two names. So here, and people are always like, oh, it doesn't have to be one of each. And here they actually tell you. Okay, so that's important. So I personally think we should avoid man one. Okay, right? You don't know his language, right? We don't know his language. So let's assume something about man two. Again, for the sake of the first one, I don't want to think about it too much. So I'm just gonna assume kind of blindly that assume man two is telling the truth. Okay. And this actually tells us a few pieces of information, right? Telling the truth. Okay, so we assume man two is telling the truth. Well, then oomph means yes, right? Then oomph means yes. And man one is lying. Okay. So now that's some information we have, right? We can't really go any further with the fact that man one is lying. So I actually want to go back to that underlying statement. So we know if man two is the one who is lying, then man one, oh, sorry. If man two is the one telling the truth, man two is the one telling the truth, then man one is the one lying. Man one is the one lying. Okay. And if you read those two statements carefully, they actually say the exact same thing. And that's okay. It just means that we didn't get a contradiction. Okay. So again, you could go make any number of other assumptions, but I think the nice thing is man two is either telling the truth or he's lying. So our new assumption should be that assume man two is lying. Okay. So now we look at it, we get the opposite of the two things he said. So oomph means no. Oomph means no, and oomph means no, and man one is telling the truth. Okay. Now here's the part where you want to look at the question that you asked the first man. You asked the first man, are you a truth teller? He says oomph. We have that oomph means no, right? Which would mean that the first man is lying. But we just said that man one is telling the truth. So that's the contradiction. Okay. So I think there's a bunch of different ways to write this. You might have a better one than me, but if man one answered oomph to your question, then he is lying. Then he is lying. Okay. And that's a contradiction because we just talked about, right, how he would have to be telling the truth. So that's our contradiction. And so again, we conclude the opposite of what we assumed. So man two is telling the truth. And if man two is telling the truth and there's one of each, right? So there's one of each. So man one is lying. Okay, so the nice thing there is once you get your contradiction, you can use that information to solve. Okay, again, we're skipping B and C. I actually think that D is easier than the first one because it's just knights and knaves. You don't have to worry about the language barrier. So we have two people, Zoe and Mel. So the way I will say that I tried to avoid negating that neither nor statement. Again, I don't really like negate. We do know how to do it. But again, I just try to avoid negating the neither nors or the both ands if I can, because it does get a little confusing. So instead of assuming that Mel is a knight, let's assume, and I'll do this both ways, because you can do it either way. Assume Mel is the knight. Okay. So then Zoe and Mel are both knights, right? If neither one of them is a knave, right? Neither Zoe nor I are knaves. You're either a knave or a knight, right? We do have that piece of information here. So then Zoe and Mel are both knights, right? But then you go and look at what Zoe says. Look at Zoe tells you that Mel is a knave. So Zoe says Mel is a knave, which is a lie. And again, knights don't lie. So that is our contradiction. That's our contradiction. So we can conclude that Mel is a knave. Okay. And now, instead of looking at Mel's statement, look at Zoe's statement. So Zoe says that Mel is a knave. So Zoe tells the truth. So Zoe tells the truth. And thus, Zoe is a knight. Okay. You could also try it the other way. So B, let's assume, and again, I think if you assume that Zoe is a knight, then if you assume Zoe is a knight, then Mel is a knave, and Mel says that neither Zoe nor I are knaves. And that is actually a lie, right? Because Mel would be a knave, but it's okay that Mel lies. Do you see that? It's okay that Mel lies because she's a knave. So I'm going to assume that Zoe is a knave. Okay, and if Zoe is a knave, then if Zoe says that Mel is a knave, then Mel is the knight. Then Mel is the knight. And then her statement about neither one of them being, then her statement, right, about neither one of them are being knaves, right? That means that they're both knights. Then, all right. So then, right, and Mel says they are both knights. They are both knights, which is a lie. And if you're a knight, you don't lie. So that's our contradiction. Okay, so you can conclude, therefore, Zoe is a knight. And if Zoe is a knight, look what she says she says that Mel is a knave. So Mel is a knave. Right. So yeah, so Mel is a knave because knights tell the truth. Okay. So again, the thing is, it doesn't actually really, you can make a bunch of different assumptions. Again, I think in some cases I would try to avoid like the both, trying to negate some of like the compound ones if possible. And then again, the key takeaway here is if you do it and you don't get a conclusion, that is actually okay. Okay, that's not a problem. Sorry, if you don't get a contradiction, right? you can't make a conclusion, but you should go back and assume the opposite of what you assumed the first time. Okay. So again, I hope that helped. Again, thank you to everybody who has dropped by. I actually learned a lot from you guys over the past 2 days, which has been helpful. And I will see you in class tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.